How are you? I'm going to turn my phone off so that we're not disturbed. Uh, how are you? It's nice to see you again. I'd love to um, check in with you and see how things have been for the last couple of weeks since the last time we saw one another.
Uh, Things have been good. Things have been busy. Just in all transparency, I today am not feeling my physical best. I'm, a little low energy and a little tired, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I am here and present and all in. So, and I'm just happy to be here with you. But yeah,
Fantastic.
the past couple of weeks have been good. I finished your book.
Okay.
That's been a real bright spot in the past couple weeks. I did end up listening to it more than reading it. I have the physical book and I got the Audible as well.
Yeah.
And just it did work out well just when I go on walks just to
Yep.
listen and yeah, and there's just so many good nuggets in there, and just it fed my soul in a very positive way. So that was nice. um I did journal a little bit. I don't know if you remember, I was telling you last time that I have a bit of an aversion to journaling. But and then even starting that process, I was like, oh, I should have asked Tina like what her process is, what your method is for journaling. Typically, when I've journaled in the past, I've done morning pages, from the
Mhm.
artist way. That's been the most accessible to me typically. Just it's just so low pressure, just
Mhm. Mhm.
be able to let things just flow, stream of consciousness. But this time, I think because so much has been bottled up in me, and also before we spoke last time, um, I think I told you that a lot of things had come to me that in the days prior to us speaking the first time. And so I
Yes.
haven't had an opportunity to kind of spill some of that stuff out. So doing that, and then, so that it flowed. I guess that's my point. It flowed much easier than I expected it to.
Yeah.
And yeah. And the questions, I was asking myself questions, which just brought up more questions, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And you ask my process and the work of inner fitness, which is, how I frame this work.
mhm,
That work is about us giving our internal self, our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, actions, and reactions time. Because if we give ourselves time, we are going to nurture ourselves and come to know ourselves deeply. And that's the whole point.
mhm,
When we are in upset, when we are confused,
mhm,
there's the part of that that goes with life. And there's the part of that that becomes difficult and frustrating to the degree that we suppress, we run, we don't have tools for navigating the very consistent up and downs of life.
yeah,
And so anytime you spend time with yourself,
mhm,
quality time, pedicures are lovely, but when you spend time with your internal self, asking questions, being curious, being open, you are literally sending a message of love and nurturing to the deepest part of you.
mhm,
And that is what does the work. So when you talk about process, I love that you said, I wonder what Tina's process is. And then you talked about these bottled up feelings. or these bottled up thoughts. You want to be in relationship with yourself in a way that allows you to consistently sort of process and be present to not fix, but be in allowance of the things that come in, and will move through if we nurture them and ourselves, and make space for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's felt great, honestly. One of my normal practices of spending time with myself is meditating. And I've been meditating for years. And, at my, I'll say best, I meditate every day, every morning. And more recently, I hadn't at all for months at all.
Yeah.
And so I had just started in the past couple of months prior to, meeting you and all of this coming about. And so it's just, yes, a reminder, and the journaling goes along with that with me. It's just one of those reminders that, like, when you connect in that way and taking that time,
That's
like,
right.
that's when things start
That's
to
right.
happen, and people appear. You said that in your book, like, how people and opportunities and things appear. So
Your universe, without sounding airy fairy, but everything is connected. And so there's a part of you that is always aiming to support you. And that's the part that we really want to, that's the idea that we really want to learn to trust, that we are not alone in this big old universe. There is some sort of connection, some sort of connectivity that has an awareness of us, and it supports, it guides, but we have the role of letting it in to do so, right?
Yeah.
And when you mentioned, we all know how great it feels to feel safe, seen, and heard by someone, right? Well, I think that just being safe, seen, and heard with ourselves is the greatest gift that we can give ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what this, work is about, and journaling and all of these other tactics and strategies aim to help you be a place where you feel safe, seen, and heard with yourself.
By me. Yeah.
That's right.
I have to say, in your book, one of there are many parts that stood out and just resonated, but one of the parts that I was like, I needed to hear that, I needed to be reminded of that, was at the very end, the story of Anton. Yes. And the briefing that went along with that, and you just talking about how just going through that experience, you just knew that you were supported, that you weren't alone, and just how you carried yourself through that. And it's familiar. I've experienced times in life where I've felt those things, and it's amazing. You had people apologizing to you in a situation like that. And so, that was a wonderful reminder.
Yeah, there, I am in awe of how, if we pay attention, we will see or experience for ourselves some of the greatest, wise statements, biblical statements. The one that comes to mind right this moment is that we will be um, how does it go? That our higher power, those are my words because I don't want, to impose upon anyone's idea or name for their higher power, but our higher power, our highest consciousness, that thing that, is the intelligence behind the entire universe, will set a place for us at the table of thy enemy,
Mm,
and we will not be scarred. Now
mm,
that's a paraphrasing. That is not a direct quote, but you know what I'm saying. That when we have a relationship with our deepest self, it connects us to the greater intelligence that is behind life. And we literally can find ourselves in difficult circumstances and feel safe, seen, and heard. Not by the people who, we're looking at,
right.
but by something much greater.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah. 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 So, um, so kudos to you for spending time with yourself. Kudos for you for going back to, attempting to go back to the journaling. It's great for you to see that there is a correlation
Mm,
between when you are not giving yourself quality time, whatever that looks like for you. You said meditation, um, but if we cease to give ourselves the nurturing necessary for growth and expansion, we will experience the constriction
right.
that comes from that.
I know as just even as a child, I used to just have a lot of experiences where I would feel just sort of the magic of the universe. And, whether it was like experiencing synchronicities or certain knowings, or just I would experience things and it would sometimes just last for a long time. It would be so powerful. And then there would be times when I just didn't feel that at all. And I never, I was young at that point, so I didn't know exactly what it was. And I remember, so years later as an adult, I was actually producing a shoot with a guy who had written a book about spirituality. And so I was earlier in my practice in terms of meditation and all of that. And I told him about that. And I asked him, I was like, how do you make it so that you feel that connection all the time? Because I just find it comes and it goes. And he didn't really give me an answer that made sense to me, that it didn't. And then it was years later that I started meditating. And after doing that for some time, that's kind of when I had a bit of an aha. I was like, oh, that's how, that's the gateway. That's the pathway for me to, but I don't know why, Tina, it's so easy to forget, life gets in the way and it's just like, I don't have time for that right now. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and then it's like, yeah, to take a break and come back, and it's like, oh, why? Okay, why have I, waited so long and denied myself? Um, so
Yeah.
yes.
One of the greatest growth principles or spiritual connection principles doesn't sound like a principle at all, but it is remembering to remember.
Yeah. Rem-
We've
yep.
we we get into the busyness of life
Hmm.
and we forget what we have been doing that has opened us up and allowed us to flourish. And it so easily and subtly sort of moves away because, we're paying attention, we're in connection, we're feeling the connectivity, we're feeling flow.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something naive in us that forgets that it is that effort that creates those results.
Mm-hmm.
And then we forget to keep, making the effort.
Right.
We forget to keep making room for the experience of connectivity.
Right.
Your meditation makes room for the experience.
Yeah, I need to put that on a poster in my bathroom or something. Remember to remember.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And for us to really catch that the thriving that we seek has one request of us, and we must seek it. That's the request. So when you pick up a book, you are actively putting forth the kind of effort that makes room for the connectivity, for the sense of self and oneness or connection to that you want. You have to want it in order to achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that we confirm wanting it is through effort.
Yep. And yes, the discipline of making the time when it feels like there is no time, and prioritizing that being a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time is a really mystical thing because it's like there's the reality or the experience of time, meaning you look in the mirror and you see time, you see aging, you see growth, whatever. You see time when you look in the mirror. And yet at the same time, you stand inside of yourself and you feel like no time has passed.
True.
It's a really fascinating thing.
It is.
Right? So, there's a saying that literally is probably one of my favorite sayings and my guiding light. And that is to live my life believing more in what I don't see than what I do see. Then what I do see, I won't see. And what I don't see, I will see.
Well, I need to process.
What'd you say?
What's that?
What did you say?
Oh, I said I need to process that or hear that again. Now.
let me say it again.
Okay.
My aim is to live life believing more in what I don't see than what I do see. Then what I do see, I won't see. And what I don't see, I will see.
Okay.
So believing more in what I don't see, there are all of these processes. There's this mystical, depth to us all.
Mm-hmm.
Again, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it science, some people call it God, some people call it universe. It doesn't really matter. But who we are has a depth and range to us And most of the time, we're working out of a very small part of our brain or being.
Yeah.
And so, what we want is to experience more of the greater part of us, the unseen part,
Mm-hmm.
the part that is connected to something greater, the presence of something greater that shows up as that answer because we've dared to become curious,
Mm-hmm.
shows up as that, synchronistic moment of meeting someone in an elevator or passing someone and getting an answer that, your soul has been curious about. We want more of that unseen connectivity.
Yeah.
And to get there, we have to allow this very concrete world that is so limited in its so limited compared to the unseen,
Right.
that we can be in it and not see it as the um, the truth of who we are. We can see it as the circumstances that we are in, which empowers us to actually be more than our circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all been a very good just reminder.
So let's make it concrete, like how can this conversation be of service to where you are in your life right this moment?
Mm-hmm.
When we started working together 2 weeks ago, there was frustration, a desire to have more clarity around your path or what you're here to do or purpose. So, how can we begin to make this stuff more actionable in your life?
Very good question. That is the part that I've been struggling with in the past few weeks. I feel like I've gotten more clarity about, the parts of myself that need to be engaged and used. But in terms of steps or those are just again with some of the questions that I asked myself, they brought up more questions, which they were progress. It was next step questions, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, can you share some of the questions that you have been working with?
Sure. So, like, what are the gifts that? Basically, we talked about me knowing that what I need to be focusing on communication and just my skills and gifts as a communicator are that's where I am now, and that's what I want to focus on. So um I'm trying to see. Oh yeah, so what must I do? Some of the things that came up are I need to determine so okay, let me take it one step back. In terms of communication, I've been a communicator for a very, very long time. At this time, one of the most recent sort of ahas that I had is I think it is has to do with more spoken communication, conversation, spoken communication, something using my actual voice more so than for the past several years. I've spent more time writing, and I feel a lot of frustration with writing, and I always have. But what I realized that through verbal communication, I feel opened, I feel able, I feel capable, I feel so. I was like, wow, what if you were focusing more on verbal communication than, trying to force yourself to communicate in a way that just you feel more blockages with. Um, so that was actually really, that was exciting, just that, that understanding. So again, so from the questions, things that came up is there training? Like, first of all, what does that look like? What are different ways that you can use communication and verbal communication to serve? Who, what audience, what topics, what, in what capacity? Verbal communication could mean something like podcasting. It could mean, giving talks. It could mean, talking to young people. It could mean talking to seniors. It could mean anything. It could mean, so just what are ways, what does that look like? That's the next level of questioning that came up. Also, like, what would you want to talk about? What things do you want to communicate? What do you want to communicate? What would be required? Would you need some training, some coaching, that type of thing? And yeah, that's pretty much the first level.
Yeah. So that's a fantastic starting place, because we've talked about it is our curiosity that tills the inner soil and allows new things to emerge. It allows that openness. You talked about being openness. It is through the being open that we are going to bump into our answers. We're going to discover. I like to use the analogy of, if you think about impacted soil, right? In order for something to grow, you've got to break that soil up and make room. You've got to break it up, you've got to water it, and you've got to plant the seeds so that something new can grow. So when you are curious, you were doing those three things. You don't have to have the answer. The answer is going to be the growth that emerges from the soil. You need to be curious, which helps break the soil up. You need to check in with yourself and allow that curiosity to move into more specificity, such as, what am I passionate about? What moves me? Where can I add value? I'm going to ask you to say each one of those statements just with a sense of curiosity, from the mindset that asking the question is a powerful, proactive act. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to say, what is it that I'm passionate about?
What is it that I am passionate about?
Where can I add value?
Where can I add value?
What must I do to be a place for new growth?
What must I do to be a place for new growth?
Yeah. And now, if you can or would, check inside and just tell me what that feels like. What does it feel like inside of you asking those questions? Just anything that is present.
Um, trying to compose myself.
You don't have to compose yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, it brings up a tight feeling here, which I think is fear. I think that's what that is.
And what might you say about that fear?
Um, so yeah, I think there's this, sort of dichotomous thing that goes on inside of me, and probably everybody, probably, of on one hand, I am, very confident, I am very capable, and I know even just my track record, the things that I have done and the things that I have accomplished. I know the feedback that I get from other people. And so there's like one part of me that's like, you got it. You got it. And then there's that other part that's like, oh, well, do you really? And just, those sabotaging thoughts, questions. Yeah. Doing something new. I told you in the past, I've acted, I've been on TV, I've been in movies, I've produced shoots for huge companies. I've done, you know, things and put myself out there in certain ways. But I think um, maybe showing up in the way that I sort of think is what I'm being called to do, it's different than all of those things. And it's more personal. And it's like I was very comfortable putting myself out there, embodying a character, but putting myself out there or in front of, I haven't, yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's part of it. And then just part of just the general, like, can you really do that? Can you really do that?
Everything that you've just said is common to the human experience. And it is absolutely characteristic of the surviving self.
Yeah.
The surviving self knows itself in a particular way
Mm-hmm.
and just wants to recycle that
Yeah.
and all that goes with that. So, being afraid of self, being afraid of whether or not you can fulfill self, being afraid of whether or not self is real and worthy, being afraid of, you know, risking and maybe failing. The surviving self is going, let's just do what we have always done. That way, we'll just keep breathing. The surviving self doesn't know about goals and happiness. It literally is meant to help us just keep breathing,
Yeah.
truly surviving. And I don't really I don't really label the surviving self in terms of self-sabotaging, uh,
Mm.
or any sort of negative. When you understand that its job is to keep you safe, and it's had millions of years of refining that role, we have to acknowledge that it has done its job really well. And there's more to us. So I'm going to invite you in this moment to say, there's more to me than my surviving self.
Don't make me say that, Tina. There is more to me than my surviving self.
Yeah. And so why do we need to say that?
And to let it know.
To acknowledge
Yeah.
the part of you that is more. To
Yeah.
acknowledge that there is more of you, more for you. Because if we go back to safe, seen, and heard, if you don't acknowledge that it exists, how does it grow? How does it enter our lives? But you can feel that there's something in here
Mm-hmm.
that wants more room.
Mm-hmm.
You
There's,
can, right?
mm-hmm.
Right? So, one of the ways you can begin to develop a relationship that expands beyond the habit of surviving is when you feel stuck and frustrated, acknowledge that's evidence that there is something more inside that wants more room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how can I allow more room? It's not um it's not magic, but it feeds, it acknowledges that possibility, it feeds that vision, it gives energy in a direction that is starving for attention, simply by acknowledging that it exists
Mm-hmm.
instead of avoiding, instead of criticizing, instead of poo-pooing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
dismissing yourself, dismissing your possibilities out of fear.
Yeah.
Does that resonate? Does that uh, um I I always aim for clarity, though we're looking for clarity in a direction of thinking that isn't common. That's the dance we're in. That's that, believing more in what we don't see than what we do see, so that what we do see, we don't see, and what we don't see, we will see.
Mm-hmm.
You don't play with it. You can't invite it into your reality.
Yeah. Yeah. That feeling that way was a little unexpected. I mean, the actual feeling while talking to you about it.
Detail the feeling. Tell me what the feelings were.
Just felt like a lot of stress right here. And, just being filled up with emotion. And yeah, just I basically pretty quickly identified it as, I was like, yeah, that's fear.
Identified as what?
Fear.
Yeah.
That's what that is. And it's not shocking to me that there's fear there, but yeah, the feeling and the clarity of it through asking those questions. And yeah.
So let's do this. Stream of consciousness, right? So that you can maybe discover more specificity around the fear, right? So stream of consciousness, just maybe 3 times complete this statement. Behind the fear is, and then just state what that is. Could be a word, it could be a phrase.
Behind the fear is a feeling of inadequacy. Wait, is that what's behind the fear?
Well,
That's the fear.
you don't have to question it. That's what came out.
Okay. Behind the fear is the question of, would anybody want to listen? Behind the fear is, this is going to take a lot. A lot of work.
Okay. And I'm going to throw a thought out, and you tell me if it resonates. If it doesn't, you throw it away. Okay? Behind the fear is the fear of hoping.
Yes, it resonates. Yes.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Yeah. And so, so that really is a hack for the inadequacy, for who would be listening, and for how much work this will take. Because you can, if the fear is the fear of hoping that you can feel, step into this vision of yourself where you feel purposeful and prepared for what is yours to do, where you feel the kind of drive where the work that is required is part of the passion.
Yeah.
Right? Where you feel like you can get confirmation in all kinds of little moments, talking to this person or that person, and feeling like, oh yeah, what I'm saying has resonance with people. There are people who get me, who feel what I'm saying, right? All of those little moments stoke the thriving part of yourself and make more room for it. So the hack is, how can I dare to hope more?
I dare to hope more. Hmm. I don't even know how to answer that.
You don't have to. That's the thing, that is what's beautiful. You're
Yeah.
making room for that reality.
Mhm.
Up until now, you couldn't even see that what you were truly afraid of was your permission to hope, your permission to create the life that feels like a fit for you. So, in making room for yourself, it's going to sound like a crazy exercise, but I'm telling you, when I stumbled upon this process years ago, for years I did it. And I said, if anyone saw me doing this, I'm sure they would call me crazy. But I would take one resonating question and just ask that question like I was writing an essay. How can I dare to hope more? How can I dare to hope more? Question mark. How can I dare to hope more? And I would do that for 3 pages, front and back. So we're talking 6 pages. How can I dare to hope more? How can I dare to hope more? And all the time that I'm writing, my heart wants to hope more. My head is, this is ridiculous. This is tiring. Why am I doing this? It
Mhm.
makes no sense. But just energetically, I was willing to meet that noise in my head, that habit of stopping myself,
Mhm.
that habit of me with this crazy exercise of asking a question that my higher power could support answering. So it's almost like I am offering up to my possibility a gift in spite of my judgment about what I'm doing, my doubt about whether or not it's effective. I'm daring to hope anyway.
Mhm.
That interrupts the habit of stopping and letting the inadequacy and the habit of, what keeps you from moving forward.
Mhm.
When it comes to internal work, action is different. When it comes to the physical world, you can see an action. You pick up a piece of paper, you pick up a pen, you exercise. Those are things you see. When it comes to inner work, the action is in changing how you think. The action is in challenging the habit. The action is in maybe not responding in the same old way. Those are powerful, growth producing actions. But we don't think of them like that because there's no physical thing. But our thoughts are physical things.
Mm-hmm.
Our feelings are physical things. So we want to begin to work internally by taking internal actions that will interrupt our internal habits.
So is that what you suggest for me?
I do.
How can I dare to hope more?
Yeah. Yeah. Write
Writing.
pages. Yeah. Write 3 pages, front and back, and just let it go. Just let yourself lean into the desire and let yourself right past the judgment of the exercise. My sister said once, she gave me a gift that will last my lifetime. I asked her if she would do something for me. She said yes. And I was like, oh, Marty, thank you so much, for wanting to do this for me. She says, I don't want to. But I love you and you need it and you have asked. That's what you are doing. When you dare to take action, even if it seems like crazy action, when you dare to take action in support of the thing you want, the action is not as in the specific thing that you were doing is not as important as your willingness to show up for what you want.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still feel that feeling. I feel like, that's how I feel.
And okay, great. Really important in our developing a relationship with ourselves. Usually when you feel that, how do you characterize that?
I don't think dread is the right word. It's negative. I don't want to go there. It's like, I don't want to go there, but I do. Yet I do.
So you characterize it as though there's something wrong. There's something wrong that shouldn't be wrong.
Yeah.
Which then extrapolates to you are doing something wrong. There's something wrong with the way things are showing up in your world. Like, you shouldn't have this fear. This shouldn't be so hard.
Or shouldn't have the desire. Even worse.
So, in essence, those moments are pushing against what wants to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So if we acknowledge that and we just say, oh my God, this feels so yucky. This feels scary. This feels uncomfortable. Just acknowledge it.
Yeah.
If you acknowledge it, then it doesn't have to gather more steam and evidence to get your attention. You just acknowledge it, but it's not who you are. You're more than that. And then you meet the fear with compassion. It sounds something like this. Even though this fear makes me struggle with my sense of, I'm going to let you fill in the word,
Confidence or um, with my sense of conviction.
yeah, whatever comes up. My sense of self, my confidence, my conviction, my belief, my whatever. I recognize that I am more than those feelings. Which leaves room for you to discover that you are more than this habit that shows up, attempting to keep you in your old and comfortable place.
That felt very relaxing. Like that gave a sense of sort of peace, expansion, and hope.
And that's what you're always going for. The thriving self, those are the qualities of the thriving self. And the fear, right, is characteristic of the surviving self. The surviving self has had good reason up until now to be afraid. So we want to compassionately acknowledge, I get it. You're afraid of your greatness. You're afraid that if we step outside of what we already know, we might meet stuff that we can't handle. I get it. It's like talking to a child. And we are so much more than this fear. And we have everything we need to meet the moment. We just got to let it in. And in the beginning, it is a seeding of your consciousness. It is a massaging.
Mm-hmm.
It is a retraining.
Yeah. What's so interesting too is that I don't know, it's just you can I felt this like the last time that we spoke as well. Like there can be things that you know, there are things that I know, there are things that I say, there are things that I preach, but I don't know. And when you hear them reflected back to you from you, and you, I don't know, it hits differently.
Use I so that you are in the personal discovery. So a lot of times we speak in third person, you know. So I'm going to invite you to say what you just said again,
Okay.
and use like when I.
Okay. Okay. So um, there are things that I know, there are things that I say, that I preach to other people, that I know. And then when I hear it, when you say it to me, when I hear it, or even things that I heard in your book, or read in your book. And when you put it specific to this situation, it just hits different. It just hits different. You know, I always talk about questions and asking, the importance of asking the right questions. And if you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get the answers to the wrong questions. You know, you've got to ask the right questions. But when you ask the questions, it's different.
Yeah. And it is, I'm going to submit that it's different because I truly know that there's so much more to you.
Mm.
And that the characteristics of that is more, of that is expanding, they defy the habit of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so as your coach, I'm here to hold the high watch, to keep my eye on your thriving so that you can remember to remember.
Thank you.
What are you thanking me for?
I don't think I've ever had that.
Had what?
Somebody to talk to me like that, to say those things, to know those things. I have such a supportive family and friend group, people who love me and support me fully and wholly. But that's different than someone who can speak to me like that. I've just never had that.
Yeah. Yeah. What fills my heart is that I have the honorable opportunity and role of sort of mirroring how you will come to speak to yourself. And the people who love you, they love you from their surviving selves. You know, from you, we all have this range of self in us, and we're just beginning to learn that we are so much more than the part of ourselves that we have consistently lived out of.
Mm.
This is a new time. This is, there is such great potential here for humanity to begin to treat themselves, each one of us proactively learning to love ourselves in a way that we become the more that we don't see, and less of the habit that has held us hostage with fear.
Yeah. And the thing that that also comes up is again, I have been love has been poured onto me my entire life. But I'm like, what if when I was a little girl, someone knew how to talk to me like that?
Yeah. And you get to talk to yourself this way. That's the journey, to love yourself the way your little girl needed to be loved, so that you can flourish and thrive in all the ways that are your undeniable potential and possibility. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm just
Is it helpful?
it's helpful. Absolutely. I look forward to, when I will be able to look at this, see the recording and hear things back. And it's almost like when we're speaking, I'm engaged in what we're saying and feeling what comes up and all of that. And then afterwards, I'm like, what just happened? What just happened? And yeah, like I worry that I won't remember everything. So I think it will be.
You don't have to remember everything. You have to want to grow. Do you get that? Yeah. Just the desire will, we have incredible brains. We hear everything. The brain records everything.
Yeah.
And our desire is it's our Geiger counter, it moves us. So having a desire allows you to feel, and in that feeling, it drives you forward. And we are just learning to work with ourselves more consciously, with greater love and trust. Okay, Nico, I think that we are at time. And
Oh my goodness, I look such a mess.
you look fantastic. I'm going to encourage you to just be aware of how often you undermine yourself, and out of habit, see yourself as less than, as opposed to more than.
Wow.
Because what you have done is extraordinary. You have committed time and space. You're fully present. You're daring to dream. You're daring to want more, not just more things, but you're daring to want more of yourself. And you're putting in quality time. That all deserves applause.
Thank you.
And that default thing is just the surviving self trying to hang on to territory, because it knows you're expanding. You're going to help it get comfortable with doing so.
Yeah.
All right, honey. Let's take a deep breath. Let it go. Take another one. Now you're going to take your hands, put them out to the side, cross them over your heart. Look at what I'm doing so that you're going to cross it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So that your elbows are doubling down on your sternum. And you're just going to squeeze yourself with a love hug.
Mm.
Your love of yourself is more important than the love of anyone else hugging you. And so we're just going to take a couple of breaths and acknowledge our self-love. You can pat yourselves like your mom might do. Yeah. Okay. Let that go when you're ready. And I thank you for showing up. And I will see you at the next session.
Right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much.